Hi, we're Group 2 and our presentation's on the European Central Bank. So we'll begin by going over a brief history and background of the ECB. The European Central Bank was established in 1998 and is granted authority over monetary transactions amongst the 19 member states, all of which perform monetary transactions within a single money market using common currency in the form of the euro. And the governing council is made up of the president, the vice president, 4 additional board members, and the 19 governors of national central banks within the Eurozone. The first step toward building the ECB came in 1988 when the Economic and Monetary Union was established. Its motives were laid out in 3 major stages. Stage 1 aimed to abolish restriction of movement of capital and to achieve price stability amongst the Committee of Governors. Stage 2 aimed to strengthen cooperation amongst the central banks and to further coordinate monetary policy, and also to prepare for the establishment of the ECB, or the European System of Central Banks, for the conduction of the single monetary policy and the creation of the euro. And stage 3 was tasked with the irrevocable fixing of exchange rates amongst the member states. The main form of banking in Europe prior to the establishment of the ECB was the European Monetary Institute, which was established in 1992 during the second stage of the EMU. Its first president was Alexander Lamfalussy, the former economic advisor and later the general director of the Bank for International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland. The second president was Willem Frederik Duisenberg, who was a professor of economics and eventually the ECB's first president. And during the years leading up to the establishment of the ECB, the EMI was tasked with developing a common currency and preparing for a single money market. The ECB became officially established in 1998 after the signing of the Treaty of Amsterdam. And the governing council was elected and 6 board members were chosen along with the governors of national banks within the Eurozone. The euro was brought into the financial world on July 1st, 1999, initially in the form of cashless payments like bank checks, bank cards and checks, and became tactile in 2001. And over the course of 2002 to 2015, 19 member states adopt the euro.
Now on to organizational structure. The organizational structure of the European Central Bank consists of the Governing Council, Executive Board, General Council, and the Supervisory Board. And the purpose and goals of the ECB is to define and apply monetary policy in the euro area, strives to keep inflation rates below or near 2%, and helps to ensure stable prices and strengthen the euro. So firstly, the Governing Council is the main decision-making body of the European Central Bank. It consists of 6 members of the Executive Board, plus the governors of the national central banks of the 19 euro area countries. The Governing Council is concerned with creating monetary policy for everywhere the euro is being used. For instance, the Governing Council is endowed with the responsibility to formulate monetary policy for the euro area. This includes decisions relating to monetary objectives, key interests, and supply of reserves in the euro system, and the establishment of guidelines for the implementation of those decisions. The Governing Council is also responsible for adopting decisions relating to the general framework under which supervisory decisions are taken, and to adopt the complete draft decisions proposed by the Supervisory Board under the non-objection procedure. The frequency the Governing Council usually meets is twice a month at the ECB's premises in Frankfurt am Main, Germany. Secondly, The executive board consists of the president, the vice president, and 4 other members. All members are appointed by the European Council, acting by a qualified majority. The 4 other members are chosen by the European Council. The 6 executive board members all serve an 8-year term of office that cannot be renewed. The reasoning behind an 8-year term is so that not all members would need to be replaced in the same year. The executive board engages in similar activities that the governing council is concerned with, such as creating and implementing monetary policy for the euro area. The executive board's responsibilities encompass preparing governing council meetings, implementing monetary policy in accordance with the guidelines specified and decisions taken by the governing council. In doing so, it gives the necessary instructions to the euro area and the national central banks. The third decision-making body of the European Central Bank is the General Council that comprises the president of the ECB and vice president and the governors of the national central banks of the 27 EU member states. So in other words, the General Council includes representatives of the 19 euro area countries and the 8 non-euro area countries. The other members of the ECB's executive board are the president of the EU Council and 1 member of the European Commission may attend the meetings of the General Council but do not have the right to vote. The General Council is regarded as a transitional body that carries out responsibilities taken over the European Monetary Institute. Since the General Council is a transitional body, it is tasked with fixing the exchange rates of currencies for countries taking up the euro. The Council also contributes to the preparation of the ECB annual report, setting conditions of employment for the ECB members of staff, and collecting data. The responsibilities of the General Council comprise contributing to the ECB's advisory functions, the collection of statistical information, the preparation of the ECB's annual report, the establishment of the necessary rules for standardizing the accounting and reporting of operations undertaken by the NCB, the taking of measures related to the establishment of the key for the ECB's capital subscription, other than those laid down in the treaty, the laying down of the conditions of employment of the members of staff of the ECB, and finally, the necessary preparations for irrevocably fixing the exchange rates of the currencies of the EU member states with a derogation against the euro. This decision-making body will be dissolved once all EU member states have introduced the single currency to follow the accordance with the statute of the European System of Central Banks and the European Central Bank. The final decision-making body of the ECB is the Supervisory Board that plans and executes the supervisory function of the ECB. It also proposes draft decisions for the Governing Council through the non-objection procedure. The members of the Supervisory Board include the Chair, Vice Chair, 4 ECB representatives, and representatives of the national supervisors. The Chair is appointed for a non-renewable term of 5 years. The Vice Chair is chosen from among the members of the ECB's Executive Board. There are 21 representatives of national supervisors, each from a different country. In the scenario where a national supervisory authority designated by a member state is not a national central bank, the representative of the competent authority can be accompanied by a representative from their national central bank. In such cases, the representatives are together considered as one member for the purposes of the voting procedure. The Supervisory Board incorporates a steering committee that supports the board's activities, including organizing the board's meetings. The steering committee members comprise the chair and vice chair of the Supervisory Board, 1 ECB representative, and 5 representatives of the national supervisors. The method utilized to select the 5 representatives of the national supervisors is by the supervisory board appointing them for 1 year based on a rotation system that ensures a fair representation of countries.
So next we'll talk about the recent news and events. So the Pandemic Emergency Purchase Program was enacted in March of 2020, and it's an emergency bond buying program of both private and public securities, and it's intended to boost borrowing and spending to help stabilize the financial market. And a total of 1.85 trillion euros has been allocated to the program so far. So this program allows the ECB to purchase different assets such as bonds from banks, and this causes the price of the bonds to increase and adds money to the banking system. And then the interest rates decrease as a result, which allows people and businesses to borrow funds and spend less money on their loans overall. And the ECB discloses the number of securities purchased every week. And as you can see in the graph, it starts in April of 2020 and goes until the end of August of 2020. And overall, the trend of asset purchases by the ECB goes down slowly. And this is a sign that the signaling effect of the program was strong and effective in alleviating the economic impact of the pandemic, even by August of last year. But the ECB continued to purchase bonds this year as well, and it slowed down even further in September of 2021 due to the favorable trend and financial conditions in Europe, and also to get ready to end the program in March of 2022. And one interesting thing is the ECB is considering the possibility of developing a new and better bond buying program once the current emergency program ends. And so policymakers are focused on easing the transition away from the emergency program to a new and improved program. And then aside from keeping track of these securities transactions, the ECB's main goal is to maintain price stability. And so this also means overseeing many different banks to ensure business is conducted with integrity. And in 2019, the ECB reported suspicious transactions and improper screening of foreigners at one of Malta's largest bank, the Bank of Valletta. And the ECB advised the bank to reassess its top managers and reduce the risks related to foreign clients. So Malta attracted foreign clients through their cash for passport program. And so when individuals opened a bank account at the BOV, they were registered as citizens since they had a passport. And this allowed them to avoid the level of scrutiny reserved for foreign clients. And so as a result, the number of clients with mysterious origins of wealth increased at BOV. And so this is something that the ECB caught on to. And as a major player in the economy in Malta, these allegations could seriously and negatively impact the whole country because the ECB stated that it could restrict the BOV's banking service to ensure financial stability if proper measures weren't taken by the bank. And so the next step would be revoking a bank's license if they don't end up fixing these issues, which is the most extreme action the ECB can take.
So in terms of new leadership, on July 19th, European leaders nominated Christine Lagarde to take Mario Draghi's spot as the European Central Bank's president. And as president, she is now responsible for the management of the euro and the monetary policy in the Eurozone. And the president also heads the executive board, the governing council, the general council of the ECB, and represents the bank abroad. Lagarde's leadership instantly changed the style of the ECB. She first headed a strategic review of the ECB's monetary policy strategy, something that hadn't been done in like 17 years. She had the ECB look into how their new monetary policy could contribute to mitigate climate change. And this change also came with a new communication style that utilized social media to promote gender equality and other social issues among the civil society stakeholders. Fast forward to September, and the Eurozone recently hit its highest level of inflation in 13 years after German consumer prices rose by 4.1%. The headline inflation came in at 3.4%, and this was the highest level since September of 2008, during the housing crisis when inflation stood at 3.6%. And this is the result of the recent surging energy prices. The front month gas price at Dutch TTF hub has risen almost 400% since the beginning of the year. And the Prime Minister of France, Jean Castex, stated that the government would be blocking any further natural gas price increases, as well as rises in electricity tariffs as an effort to try and mitigate these price increases. The European central bankers believe that these recent spikes in inflation aren't permanent and that the price pressures should reside around 2022. However, President Lagarde did note that the energy price pressures will likely outlast the other inflationary factors. She noted that the energy is going to be a matter that will probably stay with us longer than we expect as we transition from the fossil industry driven sources of energy. She says we should aspire to be much less reliant on these fossil sources. And some experts have suggested that these price surges have been accentuated by the EU's new climate policies and are a result of the broader push towards renewables. However, the EU's climate chief, Frans Timmermans, has denied these claims and insists that only approximately a fifth of these price increases are from the CO2 price risings. The Target Instant Payment Settlement, or TIPS, is a market infrastructure service launched by the Eurosystem in November 2018. And TIPS enables payments to be settled in real time, like all day, every day. And new participants can connect to TIPS as soon as they've completed the connectivity and testing activities required by the National Central Bank and are ready to send instant payments to and from TIPS. And the list of payment service providers that have joined continues to grow every day. There's a list on the slide of some of the ones that are already involved. And the ECB is also looking to expand TIPS into non-euro areas. So they have the Riksbank and Denmark's National Bank, which will join with their national currencies in 2022 and 2025, respectively. And to help with this transition, they've created the TIPS non-euro currency steering group, which will coordinate the views of the non-euro area national central banks that have all signed the cooperation agreement on how to use TIPS. And with the introduction of the Riksbank into TIPS, a single instructing party settlement model will offer a new settlement model for the Swedish market. And an automated clearinghouse will act as an instructing party for both the originator and the beneficiary bank. And all these payments will then be settled in the central bank money.
So the European Central Bank has taken many initiatives over the past decade to improve their diversity and inclusivity, including the formation of diversity networks, which help foster a more inclusive environment. And these networks are available for all employees, and they range from the ethnic and cultural group to the Parents Network, Rainbow Network, and Women in Leadership Network. And additionally, the ECB deploys diversity ambassadors, which help foster diversity throughout the entire organization. About a decade ago, the ECB set forth a women in management goal to improve the percentage of women in management positions within their organization by about 20%. And while this was not reached for all management levels, it was reached for the senior management level, which is at least a positive step in the right direction for the ECB in terms of gender diversity. They have a new goal up until 2026 to fill at least 50% of their new positions with women. And additionally, the economic dividends for gender equality, also known as EDGE, is a leading certification for gender diversity for organizations across the world, and they just moved the ECB up into their highest move level. Additionally, the ECB has multiple initiatives to fight racism within their own organization, and they focus on training for staff, surveys for staff members to gather all perspectives, inclusive language, and creating plans to accurately represent the desires of their diverse community. And These statements and initiatives are essential to keep the European Central Bank responsible for doing their part to foster diversity not only within their own organization, but also the community they represent. And in addition to these initiatives to fight racism, the ECB also deploys the International Day of program, which helps celebrate specific groups of people throughout the year. And finally, the ECB focuses on community outreach to help foster diversity within the community. And they do this by targeting the hiring processes of the financial institutions that they oversee. And one way that they target the hiring processes is by having gender diversity be a new criterion in the search processes for these financial institutions. They've also created the right to block board appointments based on gender, and their overall goal is just to promote more diverse boards and more diverse banks across the European Union.
Okay, next we will talk about the future plans. So working alongside the European Commission, the ECB has launched a digital euro development project, and it started in October of 2021, and it will take about 2 years to complete. And its purpose is to develop a well-designed digital euro and to research the impact of such an innovation in the markets. And once the investigation is complete and the benefits and risks are weighed, the ECB will decide whether to distribute the digital version of the euro or not. And the benefit of using digital euros is that it would be the same as using cash because it would be backed by the central bank. And by offering the digital euro, the ECB will expand the methods of secure payment and make it easier for consumers to make purchases. At the same time, they can also reduce costs and make business processes more efficient. Current challenges the ECB faces is how to make the digital money easy to use for everyone and how best to protect the privacy of individuals. So they would need to create offline payments to make sure that payments can be made anywhere. And some risks associated with the implementation of a digital euro include data breaches or cyber attacks. And in addition, general outages or tech issues would be devastating for millions of people who would rely on the system on a daily basis. And in addition, the ECB established the Climate Change Center in 2021 to help organize its conservation efforts within the euro system. And so far, the center has helped develop a comprehensive action plan which focuses on these 5 elements: the financial stability, macroeconomic analysis, market operations, policies and regulations, and corporate sustainability. So more specifically, this includes conducting an analysis of the carbon footprint of banks, creating models to monitor the effects of economic policies, and encouraging sustainability disclosures within the private sector, among many other steps that will be taken. So in this way, the ECB recognizes its responsibility in guiding other European financial institutions to mitigate their impact on the environment as well.
All right, so for our currency trading, you can see the currency pairs that we took involvement in, and the total number of trades. We made 20 buys and 11 sells, and the typical trade size ranges from around 10,000 units to as much as 2,500,000 units, depending on the trade. And the time frame of the trades is about 4 hours and a 1-day chart. The profit loss magnitude of a typical trade usually ranges from 1 to 2 pips, but there was also many trades over 100 pips.
So this is an example of a good trade that we did, and we traded USD Japan. And this was a good example of us going big or going home, as the saying goes. And we bought almost 2 million units of this currency, and we turned out to make a good profit on it because we saw the upwards trend going on a little down here, so it seemed like a good idea to buy. And then once we saw that we had a significant amount of profit, then we opted to sell. So in terms of pips, USD Japan, since Japan uses their Japanese yen, it is significantly off from the US dollar, like about over 100 pips. So that's why it's so spread out right here.
Yeah, for the technical indicators, we mostly use the moving average and the MACD to decide when to sell and buy. And so for the US dollar and Japanese yen trade, we took a look at the MACD indicator, which showed an increase in the difference between the slow and fast moving line. So as you can see here, there's a positive trend starting to happen. But once we saw that the trend wasn't continuing and it actually started to level off, that's when we decided to sell.
Now on to another example of a good trade that we've done. And this is actually our most profitable trade regarding the euro and Japanese yen. As you can see, we've traded over 2.5 million units of it, and there's a significant pip difference over 100. That's just because the euro is similar to the dollar, where it's near about 1-ish. And so that's why there's such a big gap in pips. And we also we saw the upward trend on the graph. So we decided to buy in and sell once we had a significant profit.
And so for the euro and Japanese yen trade, we saw that the fast moving average crossed from below to above the slow moving average, which is a good sign. And then for the MACD indicator, we could see that there was a positive trend starting. And then once the difference between the lines started decreasing, as you can see from the gradually decreasing bars in red, that is when we decided to sell.
Okay, so moving on. This is another example of a good trade that we participated in, and it's regarding Australia and the US dollar. So we bought in another significant amount of units, around 1.5 million units. And the difference between the Australian and US dollar isn't very much. So it's below 1 in terms of pips. And we had a significant profit in this current trade, around $3,300. So this is an example of a bad trade that we participated in with the US and Canada. So the units that we decided to buy were 450,000 units. And the reason it says 470,000 units in one is just because earlier we bought some like 20,000 units of it, and then we decided to buy more once we saw it going up, but then it eventually went down, so we decided to sell.
And so for the US dollar and Canadian dollar trade, this trade occurred before we learned about the indicators, but looking back, we can see that the fast moving average crosses from above to below the slow moving average, which is a bad sign. So this was a learning moment for us to figure out why this trade had not been successful.
And here's another example of a bad trade that we participated in. It's regarding Australia and Canada. And we bought a significant amount of units, 500,000. And the reason it says 510 is because we bought 10,000 units prior to going all in on this particular trade. And the pips, obviously, below $1 or 1. And Yeah, we lost a significant amount of money, $2,300. So this was a learning lesson for us as well. And here's a third example of us kind of messing up with the euro and US dollar. We bought over 1 million units, and obviously we bought 36,000 units prior to going all in, but it just wasn't performing well, so we decided to sell. Now on to our account summary. As you can see from the NAV, we have around a $28,000 profit with a realized profit of $26,000 and an unrealized profit of around $2,000. Yeah, because it's still in circulation, we haven't sold it. And here's the credits for our group members, and thank you for watching.